The story of the Great Cocoa Dynasty is a magical yet tragic tale.
The beginning of cocoa started from my generation. I, as a part of the cocoa generation, have experienced several life-changing moments. Let me tell you my story. Don't sleep, you will miss some interesting facts.
So, how did I grow up? Obviously, I don't just appear out of nowhere. I am born from the cacao tree. Isn't that surprising? There are a lot of details to keep in mind before my birth. Cacao trees are very fragile. The trees are planted in a shady area near water. Just like how direct sunlight is bad for human skin cells, it is also harmful for the cacao trees. Direct sunlight causes the trees to become vulnerable to pests and diseases, which is devastating for its growth. It takes about 2 to 4 years for the tree to bloom flowers, and only 5% of these flowers will grow into cocoa fruits. They will later become the cocoa pods in around 5 to 6 months. 2 things to keep in mind during the harvesting process is to harvest when the cocoa pod is ripe, and to be careful of not damaging the surroundings of the tree. As soon as the cocoa pods are harvested, we, the beans, are born into the world. And now, my home? Where am I from? Well, simply put, I'm from Amazonia in Mesoamerica. My home stretches all the way down to the Atlantic coast of North and South America and expands up to southern Mexico as well. Pretty huge, right?
Now you may be asking me, was I famous?
Yeah, of course I was. You might also wonder why and how I became famous, right?
Well, it all started from my homemade recipe. Shh, I'm only telling you. It's a secret recipe. In order to create a cold chocolate drink, the first step is to gather the main ingredient, which of course is me, the cocoa bean. Next, I go into the process of fermentation, and then it's time for some sunbath. Once I'm dried enough like a rock, my shells are then peeled off and then grinded into small cocoa nibs. Then these nibs are placed into pots for some roasting.
Once the nibs are roasted, they're grinded by using the instrument metate, which are grinding stones over fire to create paste. We mix the paste with water and sprinkle the seasonings, vanilla, chili pepper, and ear flour, and keep it rest to become cold or at room temperature. For last but not least, the final step is to pour the liquid from a vessel from shoulder height level into another vessel to create froth, and ta-da! The cold chocolate drink is ready for you.
Now, let yourself dive into an adventure.
It all started with the Spaniards, who arrived in Mexico in August 1502 with Christopher Columbus by their side. It was scarring. Columbus didn't like our homemade recipe. He disliked it for being too smooth, too bitter, and too cold, so they replaced the ear flour and chili pepper seasoning with an excessive amount of sugar, some cinnamon, anise seeds, and black pepper. Unlike the hot chocolate drinks you're all familiar with today, chocolate drinks were commonly known as cold drinks, as mentioned in my homemade recipe. Later, the drinks were soon developed into hot chocolate drinks due to several opposing opinions about the original chocolate drinks.
After they made this transformation, I was shipped to Spain with Columbus and his crew. Before 1502, we were never out of Mesoamerica, but by 1750, we were imported by countries all over Europe. Sadly, though by 1750 various foods and drinks made from my friends and I gained popularity among the European elites, it wasn't because of ourselves, but because of the version of ourselves that was contaminated with these weird seasonings. In Europe, we live in warehouses and wait to be prepared into drinks. So although my grandsons, granddaughters, and I are loved by a lot of people today, they aren't really loving us for who we truly are.
While Europeans enjoyed cocoa foods and cocoa beverages, it didn't impact my home well. To begin with, because of the cocoa fervor, Europeans sought to produce just even more cocoa beans in Mesoamerica. This led to the disappearance of the originally diverse agricultural system and the emergence of monoculture. Even in today's cocoa-producing countries like the Ivory Coast, monoculture remains to be a significant issue since it disrupts the balance in our ecosystem. After producing cocoa in Mesoamerica during the 16th century, the Europeans sought for new lands to massively cultivate cocoa, so the Spaniards brought me to Venezuela, and from there cocoa beans spread all the way to Brazil and the Caribbean with the help of other European nations. A big reason why this shift in cultivation location occurred is because the Europeans' arrival to Mesoamerica introduced diseases that the Mesoamericans had never been exposed to, which greatly reduced their population.
Meanwhile, the huge demands for cocoa overworked the Mesoamericans, decreasing population once again. This population decrease depleted Mesoamerica from labor force, which is detrimental to sustainable development. Culturally, this cocoa trade exposed Mesoamericans to European goods and European culture. They received commodities such as necklaces, bracelets, silver jewelry, and locks. and they were exposed to Catholicism as well.
Economically, the Aztecs adopted Mayans' practice to use cocoa as currency. Exchanges made with cocoa are seen even through the mid-1850s. Mesoamericans also used cocoa to pay tribute to the Spaniards during the age of Atlantic exploration and trade. Now that you've learned more about me, it is time for some hot cocoa.